Alright, let's talk about some numbers. Alright, so we can do variables. Variables with numbers. So we could do x is equal to, let's do 10. X is equal to 10. I know you guys have seen that before in your math classes, things like that. So this is our variable. We have a variable x, and remember we can name it whatever we want. We can do Xeon if we wanted. We can do whatever we want, but we're gonna make it simple. We're just gonna use x. X is equal to 10. And so I'm gonna show you how to use that here in a second. We can print, and let's do some basic math. We could do 5 plus 5, and Python's gonna see print out 5 plus 5. And that's going to give us 10. Or, instead of using the 5, we could use the x here. Print x plus 5. So that's going to take x, which is 10, and it's going to add 5. And you guessed it, that's right, 15. So that's going to be, boom, 15. Alright, so we have some basic math that we can work with. We can do addition. We can do subtraction. That's going to give us 5. We could also do print. We could do x times 5. So 10 times 5 is 50. Or we could do divided by 5, which is going to give us 2. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Cool. Easy. Simple stuff. We could also stack these together. We could do print. Let's do 5 plus 5 minus 1 times 10 divided by 3. I don't know, I just made that up. So let's run that and see what we get here. 6.6 repeating forever. How did it decide how to add these or subtract them and what order to do it in? Well, it actually used, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I'm going to add a comment here. And that's PEMDAS. So what it did is it used the parentheses first, and then the exponents and multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So as you're doing your coding, you're going to have math problems with more, you're going to have all kinds of math in there. And sometimes you're going to want to add something first. Let's say 2. So let's do plus 2. So the computer would go through and it would execute each one of these things in the order. But if I wanted to do 3 plus 2 first, I would add a set of parentheses around this. So let's see what it adds up to with that. Okay, so it's 8.6 with it just being in one big clump like that. Now if we put a set of parentheses around this as well, now it's going to do 3 plus 2 first, and then it's going to do the rest of the stuff in this order. So now it should change it. So now it's no longer 8.666. Now it's just 8. So that's something you guys need to know. So if you wanted it to add these two first, you're just going to add a set of parentheses, or subtract these first. It uses parentheses to determine what the order is. Okay, I'll leave that up there for just a minute, or I'll leave it up there for a little bit so we can see that. Okay, another one, just like we had print, and then we did name dot upper, and that was a function, right? Well, there's also functions in math. So you could do, so instead of, let's use this absolute. ABS stands for absolute value. And I know you guys have heard that before. That's how many spaces away from 0. So if you did -5 and you told the computer, I want to know what the absolute value of -5 is, and you run it, it's going to tell you the absolute value of -5 is 5. There it is right there. So you can also use, and just like we did up here, we put this X in here. You can put a letter in there at any point in time, instead of typing numbers in. And eventually you're gonna have to do that because you're gonna need to manipulate the information in the code, and you're gonna need it to be a variable. So let's just add this variable lowercase t here. It should give us the same answer. Let's change it. Let's do -8. So we're gonna do -8, and then it's gonna run that on that, and it's gonna tell us 8. That's the absolute value of -8 is 8. Another function we can do would be print, and we can use the modulus function. So if we did something like 10 divided by 3, this is not modulus yet, this is just regular division. So 10 divided by 3, that's not an even number. That's going to give us 3 and 3 to repeating just forever, just over and over and over and over. So what if we wanted, instead of knowing what the division is, what if we wanted to know what the remainder was? Well, modulus gives us the remainder. So all you have to do is change that division symbol to this, and this is what we call modulus. And that's going to return the remainder. 10 divided by 3 gives us a remainder of 1. So if it was 9 divided by 3, that's going to give us a remainder of 0 because there's nothing left over. And if it was 11, it's going to give us a remainder of 2 left over. Alright, another function that we have is the pow function. Print pow, and then look right there, it's telling us how to use it. So here's how power works. You're going to input 2 functions, so we could do two variables, 2 to the power of 5. So it's going to take the first number and it's going to raise it to the power of 5. So that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that is 2 times 2 times 2, oops, not 5, times 2 times 2 times 2. And that is going to be equal to 32. Pretty cool. Alright, so I have some, we also have what's called the rounding function. Let's do print round. And the rounding function, what it does is pretty straightforward. 2.3. I want the computer, I'm telling the computer round this number right here. So 2.3 rounds down, so it should return 2. And if it wasn't 2.3, if it was like 2.6, that's going to round it up to 3. Now there's a lot of functions in math, so and they even have custom ones that you're not going to be able to get access to unless you import it from outside the program, because most of them are built in, but some of them aren't. So if you do from math import star, what that's going to do is this is going to import some extra functions. These extra functions were created by somebody else, and you too could make your own and then import them. So like if you made some code that did some really cool stuff, but you don't want to keep typing it over and over, you can make it into a file that gets imported in. But for right now, we're gonna one of these cool functions is ceiling. Okay, so ceiling works like this. It's a rounding type function, but instead of rounding properly, what it does is it rounds anything you put in here upwards, and that can be useful later on. So 2.1 is going to round up because I'm using the ceiling function, so that's going to round to 3 no matter what I put in there. Even if I put 1 and you go, hey, that's supposed to round down, ceiling makes it round up. And then we also have floor. Print floor. Here's this function, and so 2.9, that would normally round up, but since I use the floor function, it's going to round it down to 2. Pretty cool stuff. And then another one I'm going to show you guys is minimum and maximum. So print min. So we do 10, comma 15, comma 55. Let's do 55 and 108. So what this is going to do, it's going to look at each one of these numbers, and it's going to figure out which one's the lowest, and it's going to return that. 10 was the lowest. Let's copy this and paste it, and we'll do the exact same thing, except we'll do the maximum function. So it's going to look at all these numbers, and it's going to return to me which one the maximum was. So the minimum was 10, and the maximum was 108. Let's see if we used everything. Looks like we did. So, and remember, at any point in time on any of these, you can insert a variable. So if you want to do x equals -10, you can stick this here, and it's going to change. It's going to look at this right here. So the minimum now should be that -10. There we go. So that's basic numbers.